All right, so this is a big day because we are on the last day in our series on the life of David. I knew that many of you would be disappointed, but it's just we started. It's time. It is time. We've actually spent about, I think I did at least 15, maybe 16 or 17 messages on the life of David. Some of them were really good. Some of them were not so good. Some of them were pretty terrible. I don't usually say this, but I will tell you, like, if you weren't here last week, just for me personally, this understanding we were getting out of the life of David, this reflection we were getting into really the nature of God and who he is, like, I think, I don't know if I've ever said this anywhere. That one might be worth going to the website to listen to. Okay, so you do that at your leisure if you like. We kind of started out talking about the life of David, and for me, it was like, this guy David, this king who did all these great adventures, and that's kind of my kind of guy. I really want to learn more about David. And we got in this series, and I think we were seeing that here was this man of great purpose, and here was this man who he wasn't a perfect guy. He failed, but he just kind of continued on, and to the point that it was said of him that he was a man after God's own heart. And even later in the New Testament, that's reiterated. It's like, man, this could be the school study to discover and determine who David is. The further and more in depth I got into that study, what I found was the story. I should have known it from the beginning, but what I began to understand is that the real story here is not David. The real story here is the nature of God and how we are seeing the nature of God displayed in the life of David. And we can look at David's story and we can see that God is faithful. We can see that he's protector. We can see that he is provider. We can see that he's all-powerful. We can see that he's loving. You see all these characteristics of the nature of God manifested as the story of David kind of unfolds. Well, the reason that's more important because if we can see that this is the nature of God, and so that's how, and then out of that nature of God, we see how it is he interacts and acts with David, then we can know that while our circumstance is different and the role we play is different, we are the same as David. He's not a respecter of person. So the way he responds to David is exactly also the way he will respond to us. He responds in a way that is consistent with his nature and consistent with his character. And he responds in a way that with David, just like he did with us. My favorite of all that, like I said, was last week when we began to understand that God, and like hear this, man, because I think this is the essence of the gospel. And it's cool gospel, meaning good news. Did you know that the gospel really was supposed to be good news? I'm not sure the world's convinced of that. And maybe it's because they haven't adequately seen expressed the gospel. You know what I mean? And so, but we were seeing last week, like the essence of this, and it's coming out of the very essence of God's character and the very essence of who he is, that the nature of the gospel, and consistent with the nature of God, is that it's not only about reconciliation, but that it is also about total and complete restoration. Totally redemptive. The nature of God is redemptive. And so in your life or in my life, whatever it is that the enemy has stolen, whether that is through some outside thing coming at us or whether or not it might be through, in my case, it's more likely that what he stole out of some mess that I created. You know what I mean? But still, because his nature is completely redemptive, then he is not only about my reconciliation with him, but he is also about my restoration with him. And not only him, but the restoration of anything the enemy was able to steal in that process. Like, I don't know about you guys, like, I'm a guy who, like, I didn't really grow up like a Sunday school boy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I went to Sunday school. I didn't ever like Sunday school, but I went because my parents told me to go. But, like, I didn't grow up I didn't grow up a Sunday school boy. So for me to understand that God's desire and his heart in the life of David was to redeem everything the enemy ever tried to steal, whether he created the mess or not, means that that's how he feels about me. Like, that's a big deal. And so we kind of finished off there last week. And what I want to do is kind of, in closing of this whole thing and the transition I want to provide is really just to come and look at the book of Psalms just briefly. Because it's this summation, I think, of all we have learned. And so I'm going to start with Psalms 144 and verse 9. And what David writes here is I will sing a new song. Right? He says, I will sing a new song to you, O Lord, or O God, and upon the 10-stringed harp I will play to you. How many strings was on, Jordan, you're going to know the answer to this. And Dave Bird, you might know this. How many strings were on Jimmy Page's guitar? You guys know who Jimmy Page is, don't you? Raise your hand if you know who Jimmy Page is. Come on, man. The guitar's for Led Zeppelin. Come on. What are you going with? No, it's a 12-string guitar. A 12 and a 6 and one, so 18. You're going 18? Okay, well, I'm going to bet that this song, whether it's, I don't know, the worship guys, man, I don't know. They're kind of picky. My point is this: I'm going to bet that when David comes here and he's like, I'm playing this 10-string harp, he's no Jimmy Page, but still, here's this 10-string harp, and he comes and he says, Lord, I want to sing to you this new song. And like, guys, what I would say to that is, look, the most natural response to the revelation of who God is that it puts a new song in our hearts, right? And if we could really grasp and understand and grasp that revelation of all he is and his character being consistent, how he deals with us, particularly I think when it comes to our reconciliation with him and the restoration of everything that we've ever lost because of even our own mess, like that will put a new song in our heart. Most commentators say that this new song David is talking about here is really expressed the next psalm over in Psalm 145. And so I want to look at that just for a minute. I'm not going to be long today, but I want to look at that just for a minute because this new song is the summation of all we've talked about with respect to the revelation of God through the life of David over the last 15 weeks. And I believe that this will be the song of our heart when we have real revelation of who he is. And I would encourage you, I'm not going to go through the whole psalm today because that would take us right into Monday Night Football tomorrow. So what I'm going to do, though, is just touch on this. And I want to really encourage you to look at that psalm and to determine, is this the song of my heart? And if it is not, I would suggest, maybe what is needed there is not for you to do something, but maybe what is needed there really is for us to have a deeper revelation of him. And when we do, I think this will be the song of our heart. When we first started talking to Jordan and Robin down in Costa Rica in the summer about coming here and maybe some worship, it was kind of like, well, what's that supposed to look like? And Jordan told me, man, I believe, but he was more like this. He was more like, dude, I think God's putting a new song, dude, in people's hearts. Dude, I think he's exactly right. And I think the song he's putting in our hearts comes out of this revelation of who he is and is expressed something like Psalms 145. And so I'm asking you, maybe just read that and kind of meditate on it today's come. For now, what I want to do is just take a closer look at that, and I'm going to look just at the first 2 or 3 verses here. And what we see, I think, are what we could call insights into the heart of a worshiper. One of the cool things I think God's doing around us, Jordan says, man, God's going to give us some new songs. I'm with you, buddy. I agree. And I think one of the cool things we can understand about that is, like, God is bringing together some worshipers. I really believe that. So if that's the case, then let's look here in the psalm, see if we can get a little glimpse at an understanding of this heart of a worshiper. Psalm 145, this is, I'm just going to read the first couple verses here. I will extol you, my God and my King, and I will bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. So at the end of his days, this great king, it was probably written toward the end of David's life. At the end of his days, this great king comes and he writes this psalm that is illustrative of his entire life and all that he has learned about the nature of God. And the first thing he does here is this great king acknowledges that royalty belongs to God. Right? Don't just skip by that. That's not, we shouldn't take that lightly. Do you know that sometimes we can get pretty taken up and feel pretty good about our own accomplishments? Right? We've talked about Led Zeppelin. Can I mention Charlie Daniels? who sang. He was singing a song. He said, "Jesus, you know the song? Jesus walked on the water, and I know that it's true. Sometimes I think that preacher man would like to do a little walking too." Right? We can get really caught up in our own accomplishments. David initiates this psalm that is illustrative of his life and the culmination of all he's learned about this revelation. And he starts saying, look, like he's the king, man. And there's been great expansion under his reign. And he starts saying, look, all loyalty, all royalty belongs to him. Well, look even a little closer, because I think it gets more personal. I will extol you, my God and King. All royalty belongs to you. I will extol you, my God and King. You know what the key word there is? The key word there is my. I will extol you, my God and King. All that he's getting ready to lay out here in terms of this understanding of revelation he's gotten about who God is, all this he's getting ready to lay out here is based on his own personal experience. Right? It comes from his own walk with God. He didn't get this from listening to somebody else's stories. I can be in settings sometimes where people are like, Dave, tell me a story, man. Tell me a story. What happened in Sudan? What happened in Iran? What happened in Yemen? Like, tell me a story. And I understand. That's cool. I get it. But, like, don't you know that, like, maybe we can all sit around and enjoy a couple of my stories, but don't you know that God's writing his own stories in your heart? So David comes to this point. He's like, look, I extol you, my God and my King. All this revelation I've gotten about who you are, it comes out of his own walk with him. He didn't get it listening to somebody else's stories. And so his worship is not, you are the God who heals. You are the God who restores. You are the God who delivers. You are the God who is faithful. No, his worship is more personal. It's like, you are my God. You are the God. You are my God. You healed me. You seen the difference? You are my God. You delivered me. You are my God. You restored me. You are my God. You have been faithful to me. You see the difference? What's happened here is that for David, it's very personal. It is, he says, my God. So when we're talking about the heart of a worshiper, let me give you today's first quote. True praise and worship is not something we do at a meeting or experience in a conference. It comes out of the overflow that takes place in the secret part of our own hearts. You getting this? Buddy, we live in a day where it's all about the show. It's all about the jazz. Right? And I'm telling you, like, I can go to conferences. I've been to worship conferences in Virginia Beach, and I've been to worship conferences in Redding, California, and I've been to these worship conferences in Charlotte. And I'm telling you, dude, I went to all of them. I loved every single one of them. I thought they were awesome. I thought they were fantastic. But true praise and worship is not something we do at a conference. It's this overflow of what takes place in the secret part of our hearts. And that was the power of David's life. Right? For him, it was real. It was personal. It wasn't just academic. He is my God. He is my King. Not only the God of the stars and the earth and the moon and the wind and the... No. He is my God. True praise and worship comes out of the overflow of what takes place in the secret place of our heart. I repeat that to make another point here. It's why this study is so important, because the personal nature of all this is the source of power in David's life. Check this one out, another quote. When the fuel of revelation runs low, the energy of worship is exhausted. When the fuel of revelation runs low, when we are in those places where we're not receiving revelation from our God, where it's not personal, where we're relying on somebody else's experience, when we are in those places where the fuel of revelation runs low, then our energy for worship is non-existent. Then we're just going through the motions, right? And so we're talking about the heart of a worship here. Jordan says, Sing a new song to the Lord. All right. Jordan tells me God's going to give us some new songs. I'm cool with that. But I want to tell you, they will be songs of revelation of who he is. And they will be songs that are personal, that are based on our own encounters with him, or they will not be worship. Making sense? All right. So if I can comment on this passage on another facet of worship, because after all, what we're doing here is we're building a body of worshipers. So David says in the text in verse 2, every day I will bless you and I will praise your name forever and ever. Let's get into the heart of a worshiper. The heart of a worshiper is through this personal encounter with him, whereby revelation is fueled so that we can continue to extol him. And secondly, he says, every day I will bless you. He's telling the Lord every day. This thing every day is significant. And let me explain what I'm thinking here. This is every day. Sometimes we think of worship as, man, I'm getting caught up in the third heaven, and I'm finding this new reality where this revelation of God is being dumped on me that causes me to adore him forever and ever and ever and ever. And if I could just stay up here in this third heaven, I could worship him forever and ever and ever and ever. Like, I want to tell you, like, I'm cool with that. I've had some experiences where, like, man, sometimes one time in Redding in California, one time just in a hut in Sudan, like, I've had some experiences where, like, man, it's like as if you're caught up in this third heaven. You are with him, man, and he's dumping this revelation on you. Like, that is awesome. That's cool. I'm good with that. But let's not forget the everydayness of now. Caught up in the third heaven? Cool. But what about Thursday morning at 7:30 getting the kids out of school? Yeah. You know, I grew up in a home where my dad was a pastor. He was a pastor of a church here in Roanoke. And for me, that was like a really cool thing. It was like that was a cool thing. I liked church. All the people there were friendly. I liked that. I wasn't sure I was buying everything he was selling, but I liked it. One of the things that made me end up buying everything he was selling is that he was the same on Thursday morning getting us to school as he was on Sunday morning in the pulpit. And so, like, guys get caught up in the third heavens and finally, I'm all for it, but don't forget the everydayness of revelation. My point is this: we will grow in our capacity to worship in mundane devotional times that we have on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning. Is that making sense? Don't confuse the jazz for the real. And even if the jazz is real, it's probably not totally defining. We look a little further. One more nugget I got here for you. Verse 3, he says, great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable. I want to think about that word unsearchable. We're looking at what is the heart of a worshiper. I want to think of that word unsearchable just for a second. Okay, he says, he's like, Lord, you're great. You're so great. We're going to praise you. In fact, Lord, your greatness is unsearchable. Unsearchable, some people might look at that and think, oh, unsearchable means it can't be understood. It's unsearchable. I can understand it. That's not the meaning of that word. I think really, if we're trying to make it simple, the significance of the word is, his goodness is so rich and so deep that it is inexhaustible. Is that making sense? I think I can get away with this story because my kids are not here, I don't think. They're moving my daughter back from South Carolina so she can get all the medical stuff she needs. And my wife's not here. So I can tell whatever stories I want to tell. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And Joy is, you can pray for her, she's in North Carolina actually, and she's doing some writing. The Lord put this on her for a long time. Finally, she's like, okay, I'm going to go do this. So she's down there, she's writing, she'll be back on Wednesday, I think. And so I think I can get away with this story. Joy and I have been married for 30 years. 30 years. But not only that, can I tell you that when I first met Joy, she was 6 years old. And when she was 6 years old, and she and her dad was kind of talking to my dad about a job. Well, she was 6, and I was an older man of 9. And I was all about my dad giving her dad a job because that would mean Because when I looked at her, she was 6 years old. I promise you, I promise this is not a lie. I can still see that image in my head. I think about it like almost, sure, weekly. I don't know, maybe not every day, but a lot. I can still see that image in my head. She had this long, straight brown hair and brown eyes. And in my child's mind, I was so captivated, and I thought she looked like an Indian squaw. Well, a romance ensued from that point on, buddy. Did you guys ever, some of you are old enough to remember The Wonder Years? Okay, in The Wonder Years, there's these characters, they were Eddie and Winnie. And so for us, this kind of romance ensued, and we were, it was kind of like Eddie and Winnie, they loved each other, but they never really declared it, but it was always just underneath the surface, and everybody knew it. That was joy, that was our childhood. Well, then in our teen years, it took on a whole new dimension. Can I tell you that at 16 years old, when I looked at her, I no longer thought Indian squaw. Right? And so it took on a new dimension there. And I was moving beyond seeing her as just an Indian squaw. And then we dated and we were married, and I began to understand her in whole new ways, and I continued to be fascinated and captivated. Really, honestly, man. Since she was like 6 years old. And then there's this trials and ups and downs of marriage. Now, some of you who are married, you hadn't known all that yet, but here comes these trials and ups and downs of marriage. And I really, through that, got really new revelation of who she was. And I began to see, like, I didn't know, man. I wasn't thinking about that when I was 16 or when I was 9 or when I was 12 or even when we first got married. But as I was seeing these ups and downs, I really saw, like, in her a kindness and a spirit of forgiveness like I didn't see anywhere else. It was cool, right? And so then the kids come along. You haven't experienced this yet either. But with that came a whole new revelation of who she was. Who in the world can understand the mind of a 3-year-old boy? She can. Who can understand the mind of a 16-year-old girl? Certainly not me, but she could. And so I began to see her, this wisdom and understanding. It kind of blew me away. Well, now we've been married 30 years, and the kids are leaving, sort of. And yeah. The kids are leaving, sort of, and we've been together really all of our lives. We haven't been just married 30 years. We've been together since she was 6. We've been together since I was 9. So we've been together over 40 years here. And now I'm seeing her in a whole new light, man. I'm seeing, like, this capacity she has for impact. I'm seeing this ability she has to really navigate what can be pretty treacherous waters at points. I'm seeing all this. But here's the thing. You know what? Like, we've been married a long time and together for 40-something years, and I want to tell you, like, I have never lost the image of the Indian squaw at 6. I have never lost the image of this captivating beauty at 16. I have never lost the freshness of a new marriage. I've never lost seeing and understanding her kindness. I've never lost being blown away by her wisdom or realizing her capacity for impact. Like, I am still there in my understanding of who she is. It's not that it's just that my understanding of who she is continues to deepen and deepen and deepen. Well, I say all that to say this is the heart of romance, not Hollywood's type of romance, but this is the heart of real romance, the real kind, the unending kind. And David has this heart of romance as he approaches the Father. And I want to tell you, that is the heart of a worshiper. Right? David approaches the Father and he's like, God, your greatness is unsearchable. Your greatness can never be exhausted. Throughout all eternity, it can never be exhausted. And so the last quote I have for us is this. Listen, quote, as worshipers, our revelation of him is personal. And the heart of worship is holy romance, the essence of which is this continual search for that which is unsearchable. Does that make sense? And so we're talking about, and I think this summation of kind of David's life and his understanding of who God is and his nature really helps us understand and position ourselves to realize what is it that is a heart of a worshiper, because we want to be worshipers. And we see this picture of David, this lover of God, a man after God's own heart, in search of the unsearchable. And what we're saying today is this, and this is a summation of it all, and then I'll sit down and be quiet. Or actually, you'll come and play some music, and we can think about it a while. Summation of what we're saying is this. True worship is what takes place, we said, in the secret place of our heart. And this is fueled by revelation of who he is. Not only in the spectacular, but also, and maybe even especially, in the mundane of every day by day. And it never ceases because he is unsearchably mysterious. So we can never grow tired of it. I had somebody tell me recently, Dave, you know, that whole like the church thing, man, it's just boring. I'm like, okay, church is boring. Okay, I get that. How about Jesus? Is he boring? Yeah, I'm just kind of bored by it all, man. And so I think that person, I have no judgment there or assessment other than probably they're just being more honest than most people. And I think sometimes for us, like, we find it all just kind of boring, man. And I think the answer to that, guys, is we just need more and more revelation of who he is. Because he is unsearchable. Some of you guys have been married a while, like me. I can say this part really because Joy's not here. You know, I remember being married over a number of years and then just kind of waking up one day going, I don't even know where it came from. Well, I kind of do know where it came from. But you ever just wake up and it's like, is this all there is? You know, the wedding's over. Honeymoon's over. Is this all there is? And I told the Lord, I want you to allow me to see her with your eyes. And when he did that, like, my fascination and understanding of her began to deepen, and like I was just so fascinated by that, it just kind of pulled me into this. And I'm telling you, that's what God wants to do with you where he is concerned. And I wonder who would be bold enough to say, Lord, maybe honest enough to go, Lord, sometimes I am just freaking bored by this whole thing, man. So, Lord, would you really begin to give me some revelation and understanding of who you are? I want to know you. I want to understand you. I want to look into these unsearchable mysteries of who you are. Like, I think if you ask him to do that, you really want him to do that, I think he'll start doing that. And as he does, I think you'll find he's anything but boring. Hollywood's pretty predictable, man. I kind of gotten where I don't even watch TV much anymore. Some of that's because I don't have cable anymore. But some of it's because, like, I kind of lost interest, man. I don't really watch the news anymore. It's all kind of mundane. It's all the same. But he never lose. If we ask him for that kind of revelation, we will never lose fascination with who he is. And we can see him in everything and everywhere. It's like a mystery, man. The church has reduced it to a set of rules. It's not a set of rules. It's a holy romance that goes on and on and on and gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And the last way we could describe it is, as my buddy did, boring. Well, as we come to close in the life of David here, I guess, Jordan, if you would, just you guys come out and play and do whatever you do for I just want us to have a time of reflection, and I think there'll be some people in the back. If you want somebody to pray with you, that's cool. If you want to just be there and talk to the Lord yourself, that's cool. But I guess my prayer today, Lord, is would you allow us, would you allow me, and would you allow people here, Lord, would you allow us to find in you the romance that we're looking for?